Ladies and gentlemen, lads and ladies of Discography City.
And Patreon.
And Patreon, yeah. I'm Dave Gebrow.
And I'm Joe Kennedy.
We are here with the magnificent, the raconteur himself, the Bob Forrest. First of all, I want to ask you, is heroin worth blowing your career over?
Yes, for sure.
Why?
I don't think it's worth losing your life over.
Right.
But marriages, careers, yeah, it's a question to ask yourself for sure.
You can always get get more of those.
Not to be funny, like heroin. There's a reason why it's so popular nowadays. It's because the fear of what it does to people is what made it so mysterious and evocative. I mean, you can go back to Jimi Hendrix is scared of it. Everybody who ever ended up being destroyed by it, always there was a period of time in their lives where they were scared of it. Janis Joplin talks about being scared of it. Anthony and I were scared of it.
That's Anthony Kiedis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we kind of discovered it together. Well, I take that back. Perry Farrell didn't seem scared of it. He seemed like the Pied Piper of it, actually.
He seemed more excited than anything.
Yeah. But the reason why, and I'm an addictionologist now, so the reason why it is so powerful, and I tell this story, the last 3 years of my using, I was homeless. I had no front teeth. Nobody knew where I was. I could just kind of wander around the MacArthur Park area of Los Angeles. I slept behind buildings. You know, the question is heroin worth it? When you're on it, it seems like anything. I give my marriage, my career, my songwriting ability, my language skills. I always tell this story. Once I got sober in 1996, I really had such a limited vocabulary. I used the word fuck sometimes 3 times in a sentence.
Right.
Because I had just lost all ability to think and create and communicate. You just become kind of like an animal. And so that's why it's so hard and so few heroin addicts recover, because it takes years to like retrain your body and mind back out of it. And your story is obviously very well told. Bob and the Monster is a great movie. I myself am an addict, and I know that as things were, particularly dicey for me, there were some artists that I really glommed onto because the connection just seemed like on a completely different level. Were you thinking about the band during that time? Were you thinking about, what it's like to be creative in the throes of desperation? Well, you trick yourself into believing you're just a few, hours away from all the magic of being a songwriter and a musician who's going to come back. And the heroin tricks you into believing that, right? Mm-hmm. So, but reality becomes more and more apparent as the years wear on. And so when I did get sober, my first order of business is I want to write a record about what it's like, what it's really like, not the romantic notion of Lou Reed and Keith Richards. I want to write what it's really about, and then what sobriety is about, and what getting, dodging that and get away. And I made a record called The Bicycle Thief, and I think I did pretty good because Steve Earle is one of my all-time hero songwriters, and he called me when he heard the record, and he said, "Man, I just wanted to call you and tell you that Serial song is the best song about heroin ever written."
Oh, cool.
I got to have this second act of my life and whatever, and so many of my friends didn't. But that I try to be realistic about it. If it didn't give you something so powerful, magical, beyond, no one would be destroyed by that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no one would. Because cocaine kind of runs its course. Like it really does. Like you're just grasping at straws, and it literally and figuratively, metaphorically.
Yeah. So let me ask you the $1 million question. I don't think anyone's really adequately been able to answer, or if there really is an answer to this, but as an artist, is there an illusory fear or a very real fear that when artists get clean, their creative life sputters out and dies? So what's your take on that?
Well, me and Anthony are tied together, right? So we went through the same journey together. We're both songwriters. We're best friends. So we have a really strong belief about this, that drugs only take away, they don't enhance. Mm-hmm. That the songs that came from us when we were on drugs are ours. We wrote them, not drugs. Right. But drugs take away. They take away your just your attention and your caring about being excellent, or your attention span. You just can't sit for 3 hours and work out a song. So that becomes more and more of a burden, and the pressures of the music business is you got to write a song. So then part of what we talked about in the band, I see the drug addiction laziness in the songwriting by the time you get to a certain place, because you just got to finish it. Right. Usually songs come in these bursts. Like the good songs I've written usually come like opening line, all the 12 first lines just come to you, and you're trying to figure out a chorus. You get the chorus line, and it just writes itself, right? Yeah. When you're on drugs, you get the opening line, and then nothing comes, and then you got like 2 other lines that aren't that good, and you got another line that you think maybe is a chorus, and you're just stalled for days and weeks and months. And what happens is the timeline to make a record and the pressure to make a record is so intense, it just amps up. And you either get it from your bandmates or the record company or the manager, or you just feel all this pressure. So then you just fill in the blanks. I see so much filling in the blanks in addict songwriting. Where when you look at, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I just got a really good idea for a mini series about if the Beatles had never been introduced to marijuana by Bob Dylan, how they would have remained as a band throughout 1970 if they never did drugs.
I don't know. I always feel like weed is the one.
Pot's a different drug. We're talking about heroin and pot is like talking about, just this. It's just not even just apples and oranges. It's like beef and oranges.
Yeah, I feel like
so different.
As a player, I always feel like pot kind of helps me focus. It kind of helps me get like a little bit like relaxed and feel like I'm kind of in the zone kind of more. It's never
pot has a beautiful sound in music. I mean, Louis Armstrong and King Oliver.
I never understood how people played music on coke. That always seemed like if I had to play a show.
Listen to bitches brew.
Yeah, I know.
Or
anything from the Jefferson Starship Nexus in the 1970s.
I mean, I know it can be done. I know it's, but man, I have to tip my hat to anybody. Like it's sort of just like kind of sucks all the joy out of everything. And
what's so interesting is now I work in the music business a little bit right now, and there's hardly any drugs in it.
Right.
There's like pot and syrup and hip hop.
Scissor.
Very little drugs in the rock thing, and you're like. There's not that many great rock bands anymore anyways, but like your MGMTs and Tame Impala, they're just like drug-free zones. It's really it's really beautiful in a certain way. And then, but pot is a different category of drug. So you don't see heroin and cocaine so much anywhere in the music business, but where you do see it is everywhere.
What are your thoughts on California sobriety? I smoke weed.
It's fine with me. I mean, I have a rehab center, and people are like, "Oh, what do you think about that?" Like, whatever. They're kids. Like, I think there's too much emphasis to make everybody be sober. Myself, the idea is a rite of passage, coming of age, become enlightened, become wise. Learn from your mistakes, all that kind of stuff is what's supposed to happen in your 20s, let's say, to get ready for adulthood. Get ready for adulthood. So get all your heebie-jeebies out and get all your fucking whatever the things you want to do are, and then start going about the business of really living and building a life and having a family or building a career or traveling or living completely off the grid, whatever it is. It's about 30 that you decide that. So the 20s are the working it all out, discovering what you want to do. Right. And so I got no problems with Cali sober. Like a lot of my friends and peers, and they're not really sober. Like I don't care who's sober and who's not. I do care about who's making great music and who's not, and I'm very disappointed. There's not a lot of great music.
Well,
being
speaking
made.
of that, speaking of great music, you came along in the LA scene, which is really, as a citizen of Los Angeles and someone who's participated in the music scene here in my own way, I'm kind of really I have really great interest in the history of it, and you were around in a really super rich part of that history. It was with Thelonius Monster and the Chili Peppers and Fishbone and Jane's Addiction going on in the underground scene, and then
those are the ones. That was our group of friends. We were like a gang. Those 5 bands. But then there was other bands that we loved and respected, like Los Lobos and X and the Plimsolls, and it was just the Go-Go's, the Bangles. It was just the most magical city. Here's my thing about LA. All these, especially when really Rolling Stone was Rolling Stone, or Spin existed, or when rock journalism was respected, Chris Gow and Hilburn, they just make up these stories like, oh, Minneapolis is on fire. Minneapolis had 3 fucking bands.
Yeah.
The Replacements, Husker Du, and Soul Asylum, or the Replacements, Husker Du, and Jayhawks.
By the way, in a couple weeks, we're taping The Replacements with Trouble Boys biographer Bob Mayer.
Oh, I read 2/3 of that book.
What a great book!
Just like, it's a great book, but I lived through some of it.
Yeah. So not only that, but like everything that's going on with you guys in the underground scene. But then there's this insane Sunset Strip hair metal thing going on.
They were also friends of mine. So the Poison guys, Ricky lived across the street from me. We were all friends. Axel and me were friends. Steven Adler and Saul, which is Slash, and Anthony and Flea and Hillel and Jack all went to high school together.
They all went to Fairfax.
How about the fact that 2 bands were indoctrinated in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame the same year, and they all went to high school together?
Yeah.
I mean, that's fucking, when's that ever happen? So my point is that Los Angeles has always been the capital of music.
Yep.
The journalists need to just say, it's in Minneapolis, it's in Austin, it's here, it's over there. It's like 4 or 5 bands. LA has 10, 20 bands at that same era that are superior to those bands.
Yeah. So you have kind of an all over the place type of discography, kind of an interesting one. So I know there's different school of thinking with addicts. You can either discredit what you've done on drugs entirely. I wrote great songs on drugs. Okay. So you're working Thelonious Monster from your vantage point as a, how old do you write this out?
61.
61. As a 61-year-old man, what does it sound like to you?
Well, the sounds of it are really bad. Like the first album, we didn't know what we were doing, and Brett, who produced it, kind of was learning what he was doing, so it's really like muddy and whatever. But the songs, there's the beginnings of a really great band there.
Yeah, it's a cool eclectic record. There's you guys.
It's
do
called
"Baby,
things. You're Bumming My Life Out" in a supreme fashion. So there's some interesting things going on. Like, we were just like trying to be a band because the Chili Peppers, our friends, were a band, right? And then the fact that we could come up with 9 real songs and then kind of 3 or 4 or 5 instrumental or joke songs, it kind of astonished us that we could do it. And then it immediately kind of, I don't know what it was, but we were just right place, right time, that in LA, that Hilburn and Michael Gilmore were like looking for the next thing to praise, and we were it. So right off the bat, it was just like, oh, they're a critic's darling. It's like the New York Dolls, it's like Rolling Stones. And like, what? We're just like 4 nerdy guys who are trying to have a band that can open for our friend's band so we can go to New York.
Right. The purest of intentions.
Yeah. And the intention always was that it justifies the Chili Peppers bringing all their friends on tour. Like, we could go open for them, and then we could see the country like they had seen the country, right? Mm. It was all really about Jack Kerouac and going out and seeing the country. When the Chili Peppers came back from that first tour and they told us all the stories of what happened, like, oh, I want to do that. Yeah. I want to go there.
Did you
like, I was on the first...
Did you ever wear a sock on your penis?
No. But that was just for a short period of time, and it's going to be in their obituary. That's kind of sad.
It'll be in the byline.
There's worse to be known for.
But then we made this second record, and I learned how to write songs from a guy named Steve Wynn. I don't know if you like Dream Syndicate.
Yeah, of course,
you know.
of course.
So Steve kind of took me under his wing.
That's
I don't know
cool.
why.
I didn't know that.
That's a whole other wing of the LA scene
Yeah,
too.
really,
That's a whole
very interesting wing. Yeah.
Steve taught me how to write songs. He taught me how to listen to songs. Like we would just sit at his house and listen to records, and he'd say he would stop it on a cassette and rewind it and say, "Listen to that lyric." He was like a professor of songwriting.
How did you get tangled up with him?
I was a huge Dream Syndicate fan, and then he lived just up this hill from me. And I don't know, it just seemed like, I don't know, we fell in. He just needed a little buddy. I was a lot of people's little buddy.
Yeah. By the way, you know who I love is Opal. Massive.
Oh, I know
massive
that
fan.
first record, Kendra's record. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Talk about the
recordings.
inspiration for Maisie Starr. That's it.
Yeah, to me, much more interesting because you had a woman who walked it like she talked it. She was the real deal.
My good friend Suki.
She ended up dropping out of society and living in Oregon forever.
I know. Perfect ending.
So Steve teaches me how to write songs, or what to look for, what songwriting is. He introduces me to Little Feat and Lowell George. He introduces me to deeper understanding of Bob Dylan, and he introduced me to the band. Mm-hmm. Right, so that's why I was.
Why did you pick the band? Why did you pick the band?
Everybody talks about Dylan and Neil Young, and the band is equal to me in a certain ways. They are equal to them. Yeah. Right. Not as prolific for sure. But so anyway, Steve introduced me to songwriting, and that's when, and Durf Scratch of all people, the bass player in Fear, taught me how to play acoustic guitar. So when we make the second record, I'm actually writing the songs with Steve's kind of inspiration and support and mentoring and these three chords, G to C to D. Can't go wrong. That's all the ones Robbie's got. Right. You know what I mean? So interestingly, when you're talking about chord structures, rock and roll, or folk, the way that I wrote songs, the way that my friends write songs, it doesn't matter what happens in between the D to C to G. You can do a lot of instrumental stuff and changes and go this way and that way, but you're going to sing on the G. You're going to sing on the D, right? Yeah. And that's basically what, I learned from Flea and John Frusciante and Josh Klinghoffer. They kind of taught me that, you can make your songs more interesting. They can still be basically you sing on the G or you sing where you sing, but it doesn't have to just play G, play G, play G, then go to C. It can actually have different chords and different interactions musically go on in between. So the music gets a little more sophisticated on Stormy Weather, our third record. But the second record, I wrote half the songs. There's a song called Anymore on there that's an acoustic song inspired by Steve Wynn, Paul Westerberg. And then we're a real band. Like we're toe to toe with everybody. And I'm pretty confident. Like all of a sudden I know how to do things. And at that point, people started asking me to write songs with them. And then writing songs with other people like really teaches you a lot, like how people write songs and how their brains work and what their most emphasis is on. Yeah. A lot of people like Danny Korchmar and Stan Lynch, I wrote songs that theirs is about the melody of the music. So they hum the melody, right? And so I wasn't really keen on that. I'm more of a word guy.
Did you call him Cooch? I would have tried to pull it off once.
When I was hanging out with Danny, it was one of the coolest things. I got to be around the Eagles a lot, and Don Henley in particular. And I was at a recording session where they were editing Heart of the Matter, a song off of one of Don Henley's solo records. It was a beautiful song. Yeah. And it was like 5:27. They're trying to get it down to 3:26 or something, or 3:18. And I'm coming from a punk rock where what does it matter how long the song is? And they're just going on and they're cutting the intro. They cut the guitar solo in half and they're down to like 4 minutes. They still got to take 30 seconds and 40 seconds out of it. And I'm just fascinated by watching this for like 2 hours. And then Don just says, cut here, and he points at the computer screen or whatever and sync it up. And then they listened to it. Him and Danny listened to it and they were like, yeah, that works. And I was listening to the words and I said, yeah, but now the whole song doesn't make sense. And they both looked at me like, shut up, kid.
Word schmurz.
Hold on. I smell an executive producer credit.
They cut out the part that leads into what getting down to the heart of the matter means. Right?
Did he think at that early stage, did he think at that point it was about forgiveness?
Forgiveness, evil. He forgave Don Henley, didn't he? I mean, he forgave Glenn Fry.
Yeah. Over what? I'll have no idea. I mean, they made boatloads of money.
By the time I make Stormy Weather, I consider myself equal to pretty much everybody. And understand I was on heroin this whole time.
Yeah, right. Who's the great lost band of Los Angeles from that period? Who's the band that didn't get their due that should have gotten more?
Lone Justice, I would say. Maria McKee. She was
good band.
I mean, I saw them
live. I saw them
at the Palace on Vine. So their first album came out and they played the Palace and they opened with Heaven by the Talking Heads. I will never forget it as long as I live. Mm-hmm. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen live. Mm-hmm. She was such a beautiful singer, so beautiful and open, and she was just the greatest thing. Can't miss. And the record industry.
She's also still doing vital work. Her solo career is still, she's doing very interesting work. And of course, we also, even if she just sat around all day and did nothing but ate Big Macs, we would still love her on Discograffiti because of her ties to legendary LA band Love.
That's right.
Yeah, her brother, Brian was
McLean.
In it.
Very, very
do you know
talented.
that Brian wrote her best song too on the second record. There's
one
Lone Justice song that Brian wrote. I forget the name of it. So anyways, I would say Lone Justice.
Bob, I would be very self-serving if I didn't point out that it's 6:38 right now, and we
I know.
We know what it's like. Listen, and I want to say, while we're during the taping of this, that it's it's a beautiful thing that we're mentioning this. Bob, you get a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, but mainly you're a dad now.
Yeah, that's it. My kids are over at my in-laws, but they love them being over there. But
I'm sure it
gets to be a bit. When you're 82, it gets to be a bit much. I'm sure they want me.
Look, you're an all-in kind of guy. I'm sure you're a great dad. You got all kinds of stuff going on. You got Aloe House Recovery Center.
Yeah. We had to change the name to Oro House, but yeah, you can find me if you need rehab. Just look me up, or my cell phone's kind of available to the entire world. So I try to help. We're not going to share those numbers here. Well, I mean, everybody has it. Like, it's at the end of the movie. Every level of rehab, wherever you are. Like, most people want to go to Malibu, but unless you're Robbie Robertson, you ain't going to Malibu.
So tell us about all you're doing so many things right now. David Byrne from 1987 is like, whoa, this guy better slow down.
Yeah, me and Anthony started a little film production company. Said and done. Yeah. And my friend Mark Cates and I started a management company called Atwater. And it was mostly during COVID. Like, everybody was thinking the sky is falling, and I already had the sky fall on me. There's nothing scares me. Nothing I don't think is not surmountable or overcomeable. And so all my friends are all freaked out. We're never going to make money again. I'm going to lose my house. And I was like, well, we can figure it out. And so realized...
Would you say you became your best self in March 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I rose to, because I'm not scared. I know it's going to pass, and I was concerned because I've got, late stage liver problems, but Dr. Drew told me, you cannot get this or you will die. And I was like, Drew, you say that to everybody. But it did scare me, right? So I stayed home for 4 months. I didn't leave, and we kept the kids home and stuff. And then slowly I just started going out, and I started this whole thing is scary and it's tragic what's happening, but we can't just live like this forever. And so many people were frightened, bands especially. And we started a management company to kind of support and help people get PPP loans and stuff like that. Yeah. Just help people to weather the storm of COVID.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. That's I'm sure there's endless amounts of work to be done on that end.
Everybody thought the sky was falling, and I was one person like this isn't the sky falling. This is surprising. It didn't happen a long time ago. It's
we've been fortunate we've gone this long without some sort of pandemic. It's so much has changed. Like I look around the city, just the city of Los Angeles itself seems like so scarred. It seems like it's kind of a different place. It seems like there's things that are missing that used to be here,
I think what happened to the average everyday citizen is what happened to me in that journey of being frightened and alone. And that's why we're here, why the sober community's here, why the people with experience with loneliness and suicidal thoughts and depression, we're here to tell you, like, the sun's going to shine. We're going to get through this. And, I think much more dangerous is like hating each other because of who you vote for. Like, that's much more dangerous than COVID.
You have a pretty complex legacy. I mean, you're, hitting people at all kinds of levels. Do you put any more importance on the recovery Bob or songwriting Bob, or where's it stack for you?
It's strange. I do put it on your kids. Like I have a 35-year-old son who's never been in rehab. He's sober. He had his own battles. I loved him. I knew that part of the reasons why he was having the troubles he has because I was a shitty father. I think it's hard for parents to admit they were shitty, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to you prefer a label and somebody else to say it's okay, you didn't do anything wrong. I was a shitty dad. And so I owed it to my son to love him and protect him and help him and tell him the fucking truth and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. I mean, we had a tough, I would say 4 or 5 years, 6 years. Mm-hmm. But now he came over to give me my 26th anniversary Christmas sobriety thing yesterday and surprised me.
Yesterday was 26?
26 years,
Happy birthday, man. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And this is a kid who, when he was 13, told me he hated me and wanted to move back in with his mother. So everything is possible, people. Anything is possible. You just got to believe and don't give up. That's my thing about COVID. That's my thing about healing our nation. That's my thing about personal journey. It ain't over. If you're breathing, there's hope. If you're confused, ask for help. Yeah, you're, that's what people don't do. Pride kills people.
You're truly inspiring to a lot of people.
It's probably advice I could have used about 4 or 5 times today. To be perfectly frank with you. Where were you earlier?
I always had this. I tell this story about this kid. I just loved him, and he lied to me, and he OD'd, and then he was in the hospital, and then I went and visited him. And when I walked in, he said, "Are you mad at me?" And I was going, "Oh my God, that's not what you should be thinking about. Whether I'm mad at you, I'm not mad at you." He goes, "But I lied to you, and I almost ruined your life because he OD'd in one of my rehabs or whatever." And I was like, "No, man, we got to figure out why you feel that way." And so kindness and kind of open-mindedness, that all comes from AA. It all comes from rehab, the recovery side of me.
No,
and just love one another.
Bob, you know what? I mean, I've been to God knows how many hundreds of meetings, and just like in any other coterie of men or any sex of that matter, there's assholes and there's good people, and you're a good person. There's tons of assholes in AA and NA. Tons of assholes. Just getting
there's tons of assholes in everything. That's right. Yeah, even the assholes on that's just one side of them.
And true, if you're a prick, I'm not going to tell you, but
no, it's true. I just think it's all gravy to me. I expected to die in 1988. Yeah. I expected to die every day from 1993 to 1996. Everything is fucking gravy. I heard this at an AA meeting. A guy said, I went around with a chip on my shoulder for most of my life, and I now see that I was born into abundance. I won the lottery the day I was born. I was born in America in the last half of the 20th century. Opportunity, everything up, middle class. whatever happened to me that made me put that chip on my shoulder, it's also up to me to take it off my shoulder. Right. And I think that people don't know they have the power. There's a Patti Smith song that's so amazing called People Have the Power, not just to change the society, but to change themselves and believe in themselves and be kind to each other. So that's what I would say. And the band is the best example of not doing that.
Right.
That's what happens when you don't do that.
Or don't do what Donnie Don't does.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us. You're a fellow music obsessive to the core. The stuff that you're doing, these days, survival songs and your contribution to the I'm Not There soundtrack, Moonshiner, is some of the most vital work you've ever done. So thank you for proving the give up drugs and give up a creative life adage. Thank you for proving the naysayers. I know. It really, you're going strong. Keep up the great work.
Thanks so much, Bob.
Okay, great. Good night, you guys. Thanks.